Cognitive behavioral therapy is a strategy based on a simple yet profound premise. Thought produces emotions and behaviors. The root cause of most mental and behavioral problems is errant thoughts. Cognitive behavioral therapy posits that in order to remedy anything, from stress and depression to addiction and weight problems, the underlying thought processes must be identified and changed. Getting at these thought processes and making changes to them, though, is an involved process. It takes time, focus, attention, discipline, and repetition to get the job done. Now, the first step in this process is to identify the thoughts that are causing the problems. This is the tricky part of the process. Most folks are simply not used to attempting to identify specific thoughts. We are actually quite unaware of most of the thoughts that run through our heads on a daily basis. Most of us have gotten good at not paying attention to these thoughts. It has been estimated that the average person thinks nearly 100,000 thoughts per day. Not sure who did the counting, but I agree, it's a huge number. And of those thoughts, the average person is aware of a mere 10%. In order to change thoughts, we must get very good at identifying them. It takes a bit of practice. This process is formally known as metacognition, which literally translated is thinking about thinking. Ultimately, we want to get very good at paying attention to all of the thoughts we are thinking. But it's especially important, at first, to think about the thoughts that we would call negative thoughts. Now, negative thoughts, by definition, are those thoughts that keep change from occurring. Negative thoughts keep us from feeling the way we want to feel, or from getting where we want to go. Positive thoughts, by way of contrast, are those thoughts that create positive emotion, or move us in the direction we want to go. The negative versus positive dichotomy is not a good versus bad one. And a good way to think of this distinction is to keep in mind how we speak of a pregnancy test. A negative result means nothing has changed. A positive result means, yeah, we've got to change. And just like a pregnancy test, whether or not a positive result is good or bad depends completely on perspective. Now, the process of hunting down and capturing negative thoughts begins with identifying, first of all, the unwanted emotions or behaviors. Now, in this case, the unwanted behavior we are targeting is overeating or eating junk food. So if we back up from that unwanted behavior, then we can begin to spot the errant thought process. In this case, we want to identify the thought or thoughts that ultimately reach the conclusion that putting that donut in my mouth was a good idea. There is always an identifiable set of thoughts that got that donut into my mouth. The trick to this first task is to work hard at developing that awareness of these thought processes. As soon as we become aware of an unwanted emotion or behavior, we have to force ourselves to stop mid-thought and capture that thought. Write this thought down, right then, right there if you can. Or if you prefer, you can text the thought, type the thought, or dictate that thought. Texting and dictating actually have become my favorite ways of capturing my own unwanted thoughts. I always have my cell phone handy right on my hip, so it's quite handy to reach for my phone and text that thought or dictate that thought. If you happen to be driving, become familiar with the voice memo feature on your phone. For some reason, I seem to capture many of my errant thoughts while I'm driving. The key is to capture as many of these thoughts as humanly possible and capture them in the moment while they are happening. What we're looking for initially is the quantity, frequency, duration, and intensity of these thoughts. What will emerge as we think about these thoughts is a pattern of thoughts that represent those usual ways in which we talk ourselves into eating those things we shouldn't, or eating too much. Now, some people claim, I'm not thinking about anything. Well, they would be wrong. There is always a carefully constructed set of thoughts that gets that donut into my mouth. Now, we may not initially hear those thoughts, but we need to hunt those thoughts down. It is so much easier to detect them when I am actually putting that donut in my mouth. So we have to get very good at listening in to what we call our internal dialogue. These existing thought processes provide the raw materials, so to speak, for building our preferred thought processes. We call this existing thought process, the negative one, our default thought process. And it is the one that is causing the problem. These thoughts are then compiled in a document that becomes the reservoir, the collection, or the library of thoughts that we will use as the building blocks for cognitive restructuring, which is the next step of the process. So here are the steps. First, acquire a journal or a notebook, or use your computer or cell phone if you wish, and begin recording these thoughts daily. The thoughts that give you permission to eat the things that you don't want to eat. Next, look for patterns and themes. Get in the habit of tuning into your own thoughts and recording them as they happen in the moment. Now, this exercise is based on the assumption that one already knows what to eat and how much he or she should be eating. Since we know what we should be doing, then what we're really looking for is how we talk ourselves into doing just the opposite. Now, the answer lies in our thinking. Each one of us, whether we want to admit it or not, has a unique set of thoughts that we use to talk ourselves out of things we should do and into things we shouldn't. So our assignment is to capture these thoughts. Here are some examples. I don't have time. I'll just grab something quick. I really don't care at this point. What does it matter? Just eat it. I deserve a treat today, and a bit of chocolate wouldn't hurt. I feel deprived when I don't have what everyone else is having. I've burned a lot of calories exercising today. I can surely afford it. There's always someone bigger than me. I can just buy bigger clothes. And I'll just start this tomorrow. So each and every time you eat, pay close attention to your thinking. What thoughts are occurring when you decide to eat? What thoughts are occurring when you decide to eat too much? These are our negative thoughts, the ones that drive us to do the things that we don't want to do. By definition, these are our addictive thoughts, and it is critical in this process to learn to identify these thoughts. We capture these thoughts in real time. Text them, jot them down on a piece of paper. Do whatever it takes to get these thoughts recorded in real time. These thoughts then become the raw materials for the next step in the process.